Hi everyone, good to see so many people. As Adam's just introduced, I'm from the University of Southampton. I've just finished my PhD there, or almost finished the PhD there, and I've now started working in consultancy, as I did before my PhD, working on environmental assessments of planning policy and developments. But this presentation is about part of the work I did for my PhD. Just to run through a quick sort of context and background for this particular study, and a bit about the methodology, but mainly focusing on the results around how citizens, what citizens think about urban trees and whether they value them, and in terms of sort of a monetary valuation, the value that they put on these trees and the benefits from trees. And then finally, I'll just quickly finish off with implications for decision makers, local authorities from this study. So as Emma already talked you through earlier on in this session, urban trees provide a whole range of benefits to society. There's just a small sample of the different benefits on this slide. Trees can help to improve air quality, reduce flood risk, provide aesthetic benefits, provide shading, property value uplift as well. But what I want to know, we already know about these benefits, but how can we enhance these benefits in urban areas? The first stage of the PhD, I interviewed local authority tree officers from across the UK, focusing in particular on densely populated cities. And I found that the tree officers were not managing their urban trees with these benefits, ecosystem services in mind, due to a lack of funding and a lack of support. Most of them have no budgets for tree planting anymore, so it's going to be quite difficult to get more trees into urban areas when the local authorities don't have the support or the funding to do so. So the next stage of the project involved interviewing businesses. Might businesses be willing to pay for tree planting in urban areas, given that they are some of the beneficiaries of those benefits? The results there were very positive. Businesses were actually aware of some of the benefits that trees provide, and what is more, they were willing to contribute to paying for tree planting in the city, partly for societal benefits, partly for their own benefits. And that's, for example, in terms of improving their reputation amongst competitors and clients and customers, but also for more sort of direct benefits that trees around the workplace can help improve staff productivity and reduce sick leave and that kind of thing. The final stage of the PhD, which is what I'm going to talk to you about today, I've also conducted choice experiments with citizens to find out if they are also willing to pay for tree planting in cities. If you want to know anything more about the interviews with tree officers and with businesses, you can come and speak to me afterwards. I'll be on the Tree Design Action Group stand just over there. And they're also published, free to download from online if you want to have a look more into those. So this third stage of the study, the purpose of this is to find out what is citizen willingness to pay for tree planting. And in particular, I want to know whether they're willing to pay for three specific benefits that trees provide: improving air quality, reducing flood risk, and aesthetic benefits. And the second purpose of the study is to determine whether willingness to pay for tree planting is affected by the uncertainty surrounding the delivery of tree benefits. A lot of tree advocates kind of indicate that all trees provide all benefits in all situations, but that isn't the case. Different benefits come from different trees, and it's dependent on so many different factors. I'm not actually going to talk about the uncertainty side of things in this presentation, but again, if you want to know more about that, come and talk to me on the TDAG stand. So the choice experiment with citizens was conducted via an online survey, comprised questions covering citizens' attitudes towards trees and tree benefits, a section on discrete choices requiring trade-offs between the different levels of benefits and costs associated with a tree planting program, a proposed tree planting program, I asked them about their subjective belief in the delivery of benefits, so the uncertainty side of things, and socio-demographics. And that was analysed via a mix of qualitative and mainly quantitative methods. The study was carried out in Southampton. Citizens were selected from the electoral register. 6,500 were mailed and asked to complete the online survey. Around 400 or so did so. My respondents were a little older and more highly educated than Southampton's population as a whole, but they were representative in other ways. So what were the attitudes of the citizens of Southampton towards the city's street trees? As you can see on this graph, I asked them about a number of different tree benefits. Hopefully you can read those. How important these different benefits that trees provide are to those individual people. All of the tree benefits were important to at least 50% of the people in the sample, and most of them were important to the vast majority, at least 80% of them. In contrast, the different nuisances that trees can provide, for example, blocking light or tree sap falling onto cars or that kind of thing, or root damage on pavements from tree roots. These were annoying to some people, but they were far less important than the tree benefits. All of these nuisances were important to less than half of the respondents. So the street tree planting programme that I proposed, there's a range of different attributes focusing on the air quality benefits, the flood risk reduction benefits, and the change to the appearance of the streets. The pictures at the bottom show a typical residential street in Southampton with no trees, and an idea of what it might look like with planting of small trees, large trees, or mixed size and species of trees. So there's the current situation with no tree planting, everything stays as it is, or if we do have tree planting, there's different possible outcomes for those air quality, flood, appearance options relating to the number of reduced air pollution related deaths and properties at risk of flooding. There's also a payment associated with this. I proposed through a city tree fund, which would be similar to a tax, a range of different prices. So what did people think about paying for trees? Of the 362 respondents, the vast majority were willing to pay for tree planting regardless of the different levels of the benefits. It didn't matter to them necessarily whether it was 500 properties no longer at risk of flooding or 100. They wanted more trees. 18% only wanted to pay for those sort of higher level benefits and not for the lower level ones. 7% did not want to pay at all. The main reasons why people wanted to contribute to tree planting in Southampton is because they wanted to help improve air quality in the city. They wanted to improve the aesthetics. They wanted to reduce flood risk. And also, quite a lot of them are thinking about future generations. They want to make sure that the city is in a better state, better quality for their children and their children's children. For those that were not willing to contribute, many of them thought that actually it's the council's responsibility. We already pay council tax. Why can't they just plant trees out of the money they've already got? Some of them genuinely just couldn't afford to pay any extra. And also there was a feeling that perhaps maybe polluters should be paying, developers, businesses. Why should it be citizens? And some people also thought that the council can't be trusted to deliver such a programme. So the choice questions look something like this. On the left, there is a list of different attributes which relate to the air purification, flood risk reduction, appearance and payment attributes. The respondents then have to choose between different tree programs which have sort of randomly allocated levels, or no tree program which has no additional benefits and no cost. And there were 12 of these questions, and each of them had different levels for tree program A and B. To work out the willingness to pay, based on 12 choices per respondent, and entering that data into a model, On the left there are different attributes which became the variables in the model. There's also something called an alternative specific constant. So this is the utility that respondents get from having a tree planting program, whichever levels it's associated with, just having the trees as opposed to not having the trees. And that was based on the baseline of small trees. So it's calculated by dividing each of those variables by the price. And the results were people were willing to pay per household per year £128 for having a tree programme of some kind versus no tree programme. And then on top of that, an additional £8 per household per year for improving air quality, so reducing the number of deaths, and also an additional £5 per household per year for reducing the number of properties at risk of flooding by 100, or per 100. There was no additional willingness to pay for large trees over small, so that means that people were indifferent between large trees and small trees. But there was a negative willingness to pay for mixed trees. So the aesthetics of all different shapes and sizes of trees didn't appeal to people in this particular sample. So overall, for the lowest levels of benefits there, small trees, 100 fewer properties at risk of flooding and 1 fewer pollution-related death. Total amount, £140 per household per year. The drivers of willingness to pay, there's quite a lot of variation across respondents as to why they would pay certain amounts for these different benefits. Willingness to pay for enhancing air quality was related to a number of different factors, including those who would support tree planting because they particularly want to enhance air quality. Fairly obvious relationship, that one. But also those who are more confident that trees actually can improve air quality. Men wanted to pay more for improving air quality, members of environmental organisations, and those with higher income. For flood, there weren't any significant drivers, but correlated with that variable, older people were willing to reduce flood risk more. In terms of large trees or mixed trees, for large, people were willing to pay more for large trees as opposed to the small trees if they put more importance on shade provision from trees, and because they think that aesthetics in the city is particularly important. Older people, members of environmental organisations, and then there was a negative association with people finding that trees blocking light to be a particular nuisance. Similarly for mixed trees, significant relationships with finding house price increases from having mixed trees in the vicinity, and also being members of environmental organisations. So implications of this study for local authority decision making. The tree benefits were significantly more important to citizens than the tree nuisances. And this is the complete opposite of the perception that the tree officers that I interviewed at the earlier stage had. They only hear citizens complaining about trees. They never get a call from a citizen to say, I love the trees in my local area. That never happens. So the tree officers think that citizens don't like trees. And this study, along with what's happened in Sheffield with people training themselves around trees, actually people do like trees. They just haven't been asked. If you ask them, you find that they are supportive of trees and they are actually aware of the different benefits that trees provide. Not only that, they are willing to pay for tree planting, and they are willing to pay additional amounts for tree planting that is specifically focused on improving air quality or reducing flood risk. And aesthetics were important as well, but large and small trees were preferred to mixed trees. Just a little caveat, as with any study, obviously I contacted thousands of people, but only a few hundred responded. So whilst the ones that responded were very positive, I cannot say that all citizens like trees. That's all. Thank you very much.